You are now tuning in to the Going North podcast with your host, best-selling author and professional speaker and member of the John Maxwell team, Dominic Dom Brightman. And every Monday and Thursday, we're going to hear the voice of a different author sharing their gifts, stories, and expertise to help you charge forward in life. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, we bring some fabulous humans from across the globe. Today is no different because it's another special appearance from one of the greatest movies on the planet right now, known as How Thoughts Become Things. We got another magical guest from that wonderful movie. 7 out of 5 stars, folks. Check it out like a library book and tell all your friends. Tell your cat about it too. And today's luminary from that movie is known for teaching worldwide tools that entrepreneurs can use to access greater abundance and success in their lives. And she also breaks down the science fundamentals of our mind, holding patterns and vibrational shifts to support people into stepping into a higher potential and live a more fulfilling business life, as well as having more fulfilling relationships. This fabulous lady right here, and I do say marvelous as well, for 15 years has taught yoga and ran 3 successful businesses and coached other entrepreneurs on how to live from a heart space and utilize the skills of visualization and manifestation to create the life they desire. This lady right here is a highly sought after, have to put the highly there because it's weed high, because she's a that's right, highly sought after teacher with yoga and philosophy, and continues to share her passion on empowering others to see what is possible for them in their lives. So let's give it up for Miss MF herself. And no, it's not what you're thinking when I said MF. It's the marvelous Meagan Fettes. How are you doing today, Meagan? How you feeling?
Oh, I'm so great, Dom. So great. And thanks so much for having me on here, man. I'm excited to dive into some cool stuff with you.
Oh, yeah, some stuff that's cooler than 7 cucumbers, I bet.
You bet. Definitely could be. Oh, man, I love your laugh. It brings so much joy. I bet you hear that quite often, don't you?
Yeah, more often than expected. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know that was a thing, but all right, cool. Like, yeah, got to spread the joy like butter on bread.
Amen. That is, I think that's really what our true essence and our true journey is all about. Like, how do we unlock that joy within ourselves, and how do we share that abundantly with everybody else?
That's a darn good question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we do it?
Yeah, well, I mean, really, it's all about how do we become it, I think is the better question. How do we become the epitome of joy? And so much so that we just naturally share it, that we lead by example, that we share the gift of joy as through our radiation of who we are versus thinking of what we need to do it.
I like it. I like it indeed. And the beautiful thing about it is that it takes usually some kind of effort and some movement of feet to kind of make it happen to get to that point where it radiated. So mind filling in the listeners of who is the marvelous Meg herself?
Sure. So I'll share a little bit about what I do and who I am and my journey that's brought me to where I am at. So you introduced me so well, Dom, so I'll leave that piece there, but I'll share a little bit about my journey because I think sometimes that helps listeners to understand that we're all human, that we've all gone through our own experiences and our own journeys. And, I lucked out. I grew up in a very supportive household. I was raised a lot and spent a lot of my time with my grandmother, who was the epitome of the law of attraction. She radiated joy. She didn't move very fast. She loved experiencing life. And she would she lived in abundance, but yet she never worked a day in my life. And so I got to like experience all of this at a very young age. But on the other side, on the contrast, I had my parents who are absolutely incredible people, but they worked like 5 different jobs and yet barely scraped by. So I saw the contrast of like abundance and scarcity, and it was amazing. And through my own journey, I got into like my teen years and started to really question who I was and where I belonged, and got into a relationship that was very unsupportive, I'll say. It turned out to be very abusive on every level. And I, instead of coping or dealing with that, I decided to turn to drugs and alcohol. And I got myself really deep into drug addiction and alcoholism. And literally, I just like woke up one day after having some pretty close calls with my life. It sounds so silly to say, like I literally woke up and there was that aha moment, that epiphany, but it literally was. I remember sitting at a stoplight because I was on my way to work and I was doing my regular, like counting down the hours I had until I could get high. And nothing was really out of the ordinary, but I was sitting at this stoplight. And I remember all of a sudden it just dawned on me that I had 2 choices, that I could either go down the path of addiction that I knew, or I could try something different. And I was kind of sick of feeling frustrated and tired and overwhelmed and all of these other emotions that I had. So I thought, you know what, let's just try it out. And I jumped in with both feet into this unknown way of life and enrolled myself into a mastermind group. And I enrolled myself into a yoga teacher training and let go of the people I was hanging out with. And I made all of these life changes and discovered through the yoga teacher training what it meant to really own myself and be responsible for myself and really choose to look at all aspects of myself, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it was from there that I kind of knew I had to teach yoga. And I started teaching all these tools, and eventually I went on to facilitating yoga teacher trainings and retreats, to now supporting individuals through moving within their mindset, shifting their lifestyle, and developing spiritual habits that really align them with who they're meant to be versus who they think they should be. So it's been quite the journey, and definitely one that had a lot of twists and turns. It was never one that was a straightforward path, but it was definitely one that encompassed a whole lot of stuff at a very short time so that I could learn and grow and show up the way that I meant to show up.
Oh, yeah. I'm showing up with the radiance too, I bet.
Most days. I mean, the thing is that I really mean that when I say we're all human, right? And I think going kind of back to that joy, because that almost seems to be something that's so prevalent in this conversation already, is joy. And I think so many people think if we want to experience joy, life has to be going the way that we want it to. But that's not the reality, because life is always happening, whether we can control it or not, because we really can't control it. But joy is allowing, that art of allowing us to be in that experience without the desire for it to be anything different.
Yeah, you could say that again, because I mean, we can make plans all day and then God laughs at them and then life happens.
Right? I often say that God has one crazy sense of humor, because you know those moments when you want something so bad and you kind of get squeezed out, where finally you just get to a breaking point. And I feel like almost everybody's had that, where you're like, finally you come down to your knees and you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And you just kind of let go. And then finally God's like, there you go. Now you're in the right spot. And then lets everything unfold.
Exactly. It's like you found the ultimate mushroom and then you can finally expand, like in Mario World.
Yeah, exactly. The so true. So true.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And it's actually good that you're actually allowed to tell the tale about it, because I did a little snooping like I usually do with every guest on the show and found out that you OD'd 3 separate times, was it right? And actually came back
Mm-hmm.
alive from all 3 of them. And it looks like the 3rd time was the charm for it.
It was. And it's interesting because we always think, okay, well, if we have that like close call, that would be enough. But sometimes we have to go really, really deep into those shadows, really deep into the rocks, right? Like everybody says, oh, well, they need to hit their rock bottom. Well, somebody's rock bottom may not necessarily be where we think it is. It might be a little bit deeper. There might be like a little bit of pebble that they hit, and then they have to go a little bit further to hit like the big boulders. And that was my experience. Whereas others, like, I mean, their rock bottom is a lot more like easier to find, but mine definitely wasn't. I had to go a little bit deeper before I made that choice and before I made that decision of moving forward with something different in my life.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like, you know what? Rock bottom isn't enough. Where's the basement of rock bottom? Ah, here it is.
Yeah, like, no, I mean, this is too easy of a climb out, right? Sometimes it's like, I need to learn as much as possible. So let's go like way far into this.
Exactly. It's like go deeper.
Right? Totally.
Shovel.
Well, and I mean, really and truly, that's what it's all about, right? Go deeper into ourselves, go deeper into life. What is it that we're really wanting to discover, and how deep are we willing to go to create it, or to discover it, I should say.
Heck yeah, amen to that. And heck, you even touched on a powerful point with the whole rock bottom piece and mentioning that rock bottom is different for everyone, because it's so darn true. Because like that could be one of those lessons that life is trying to teach us, and that classic example of the 2x4 held by the great creator smacking us with some setbacks, and we don't get it the first time, or some folks may not get it the 10th time, and you just have to get smacked until you get the point.
Yeah. And remembering, so I'm a big believer that we do get those nudges, we get those guidances, but sometimes there's a deeper lesson that we're meant to learn. And so sometimes we do have to go a little bit deeper in where we take ourselves, or the challenges that we create for ourselves, so that we can come through that lesson that we might not have gotten if we just listened to those nudges. I know for myself, that was really it. Like when I came through that experience within my addiction, I had to overcome so many aspects of myself. I had to really look at all of my shadow, all of the pieces that I was really avoiding. And it was not easy, but because I had hit so low, there was no other option. There was no other choice for me anymore. And I think I needed that in order to move forward. And I think that's the way some people are. Whereas for others, there might not be as deep of a lesson or as deep of a thing that they need to learn or cultivate within that one space. So it's just different. And remembering that we're all on our own journeys, right? Whatever that looks like, or however we experience it, is unique.
That's right. We are all special snowflakes in this world. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. A specific design for each one, except hopefully a lot more durable though.
we don't melt to the touch. I mean, right. We might. I mean, that's all a unique experience too, I guess. But yeah, it's pretty interesting when we break it down. I'm a big believer that we are all one, like we're all one soul, but we're all very unique expressions of that. And we all carry our own lessons that we're meant to teach or guide within our own lives and journeys, and those that we're closest to.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So with overcoming that addiction, there may be folks out there who may be dealing with their own personal addictions. So making out of the basement of rock bottom, what's probably one of the biggest things that's helped you to really stay consistent with basically avoiding that drug addiction for so long afterwards?
Yeah. The biggest thing that kept me going in the direction that I've been going is to be on purpose. And what I mean by that is I didn't know it at the time, but when I had gone into the yoga teacher training, I started surrounding myself with people that I started teaching that began to really resonate with the things that I was saying. And when I started sharing about my past as an addict, then it became real, where people were like, oh my goodness, and they started listening to all of the lessons I had taught. And, you know, I'm a mother, I've got 2 young kids, and people say all the time, well, your purpose must be on point with your kids. And I say, no, it's actually every single person that I've taught, every single person that I've guided in my business, in my journey, because I've surrounded myself with so many people now that I've taught in the purpose that I've been on, that I know if I were ever to go back to that space, it's not just me that it would affect. It would affect the energy of all of the teachings that I've done over the years. And do I want to diminish the energy that I've given to people, or do I want to increase it?
Well, definitely increase. Definitely increase. Folks got to expand. Well, not in all facets. I mean, keep the waistline slim as possible, right?
Yeah, always expanding, energetic expansions.
Oh, man. But yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's definitely powerful indeed. So 16 years with all the yoga goodness and helping hundreds of magical humans find their joy and live better lives. So with all this yoga, what's really next for you? Because I know you had a book in the past and it was a nice little joy journal, but is there going to be another solo Meagan project in the future?
There is actually, there's a book that I'm going to be releasing here at the beginning of the year in January called Choose You. And really what this is all about is how to understand the universal laws, so the 12 universal laws that navigate everything in existence, and how to bring yourself into alignment. So it's going to be an action-based or an inspired action-based book where you can learn the principles, understand how it applies to your life, and create an action-based plan to implement it so that you're in alignment with who you're meant to be versus who you think you should be.
I like the way you described it, an inspired action book. I love that.
Well, because often we think about actions, right? And we can take actions all day long, but if they're not inspired actions, and what I mean by that is actions that are intentional, that are moving us in the direction that we want to be moving in the alignment that we're meant to be in, then it's just busyness, right? Whereas that inspired action, it builds momentum, it increases our energy, and it allows us to actually see the results that we want.
That's right, folks. You too can have that cowboy hat cactus in your house. Yes, folks, you can have it.
Oh. I feel like that's such a fitting analogy considering where I live.
A lot of cacti in Canada, aka Canada.
No, not a lot of cacti, but cowboys, yes.
Okay. I was about to say, I'll be interested. Like, okay.
I don't know if cactuses do well in the frozen north.
Yeah, exactly. I've been like, okay, so there's a secret hot spring of Canada that no one knows about that Meagan has access to. Like, okay.
Yeah. that the directions will be given on the next podcast. Just kidding.
I should have known. It's like, yep, she's really have abundance, folks. She really knows about that abundance thing. It's like, yep, we get the secret hot spring location out of her right now. That's right. We're all gonna join her.
But I don't really know if that would be an exciting spot to visit because you'd have to be watching her every step. It'd be quite pokey.
And a little hokey.
Oh.
Yep, and that's when we turn ourselves around, and that's what the podcast is all about. Oh yeah.
Well, and I feel like this is just such a great experience of what life is, right? Like life is you got this like clarity and you're moving it forward in a direction, and then we go sideways. And then we bring ourselves back to that path, and then it goes sideways. The journey of life is not straightforward. And I think that's how we're meant to embrace it. And I love that this is really that experience of life, the joy, the sidewinding, the fun that really it's meant to be.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So any advice for the folks out there when life goes sideways into those setbacks where we have to realize that, you know what, this is a moment where it's just a little delay, but not a denial.
Mm-hmm. When we go sideways, you know what? My best piece of advice is to bust out some curiosity. You know, we get so caught up as human beings in thinking that things should be a certain way. And we see only that which is within our blinders, right? And we kind of get tunnel vision, that we forget that there's all of this other life happening around us. And when we start going sideways and when things aren't going the way that we want, dive into that curiosity. What is it that's creating that challenge or creating the resistance? What is it within you that you can shift or change or expand that would help to bring you into that alignment, and so that you can move forward and really thrive in who you are?
Oh, yeah. That's right. Gotta thrive in who you are, indeed. Yes, indeed. No magazine or website required to do it either.
Mm-mm. Nope. And yeah, like when we get curious within ourselves, we give ourselves permission. We give ourselves permission to enjoy life, to see things as not black and white, but as colorful as they really are. And when we get curious, we start to see and think about different solutions that we never thought of before. I will often say that the best teachers in life are kids, because there is no kid that I have ever met, that young kid, that is not able to create a solution or find a way to get what they want. They're resourceful. They know what they want to get. They're resilient. They know how, but they do it all from a space of curiosity. Like, oh, well, that way didn't work. And instead of getting hung up on the frustration, because they'll get frustrated, but instead of getting hung up on it, they will pause and get curious about, okay, well, if that didn't work, let's try this. And then let's try this. And it almost becomes like a game. And then they find a solution that works. And that's really all that we're meant to do when things go sideways. Get curious, expand your point of view, see what you can create from what it is that you're, or where you are in that moment.
I like it. I like it indeed. And heck, I'm actually surprised they mentioned the fact the kids don't have filters either.
So very true. I have 2 young boys myself, and I would love to say that I'm shocked, but I'm really not, because in our house, we don't have many filters. So they come by it, quite honestly, but they're so vulnerable and authentic, right? Like there's no desire to appear a certain way or to think that they need to be something that they're not. They just are. And they really don't care how people perceive it or don't. They're just fully in abundance of who they are and what life has to offer.
Amen to that. Amen to that indeed. And the beautiful thing about it is that you help a lot of your clients actually get closer to that state when they were a child where they got curious. So mind going deeper into how you help your clients to do that?
Yeah, totally. So one of the biggest things that I love to do is to shift people's perspective. So I joke that my initials are MF, and I joke that they do stand for something a little bit other than Meagan Fettes. So, and I mean, I'll leave that up to people's imagination. But what I love to do is to see where people are perceiving life at, and to understand why or what has happened in their life to create that point of view. And then I like to stretch it and expand it so that they can see it from all different angles. And sometimes we'll even flip it upside down. But we get into really unraveling what I like to call the story that they've created based on past-based experiences that they had as a child or as a teenager that are getting wrapped up into their present moment. And when we go through that stretching and that experience of shifting the point of view, then I like to bring it back into, okay, well, what is the factual things that happened? Let's unwind from that story now that we've stretched it and we've shifted it and let you see it from all different angles. Now let's get back into the facts and let's see how that creation of your story even began. So it's really about shining, the way I look at it, it's like shining a flashlight almost on like all the little different patterns and ways of being or behavior that we create that we're not even aware of, that we're kind of just doing out of old habits, and allowing ourselves to see those different perspectives and then get really simplistic, see the facts, and then really understand what that process is of creating. And then we start to notice how we're reacting in it, what we're doing to try and hide our reactions, all of that fun stuff. And it's almost like a science experiment with our own lives to be able to see what isn't working and how you can shift it, but not just shift it. How can you utilize that whole process in every aspect of your life so that you actually have a tool to see things differently, to be able to create a new story or see things as factual in the present moment.
I did not know you had a lab coat hiding around somewhere. Alrighty.
I do. I really do. It's tucked away. Not a lot of people see it, but it is there.
That's right, folks. She's making you uncover the stories that trapped you in your current self if it's a darker version, and helps you to radiate outward. Find that story, kick it in the keister, make it explode, and then you have joy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I'll say it's like one of the universal laws. It's like the law of polarity is the idea that every single thing in life has an opposite. And one of my favorite things to do when we're diving into understanding the way the mind works and understanding the patterns and behaviors and habits that people have that keep them where they're at is helping them to see the parts that they often avoid, that make them uncomfortable, that maybe they feel is bad or wrong or negative, whatever the label or compartmentalization may be that they've created, and recognize that we cannot be whole, we cannot be who we are in this human experience unless we acknowledge and accept all parts of ourselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And those are really where the big transformations happen. When we stop making ourselves bad for basically being human, and we allow ourselves to see it and accept it as part of our human beingness, and then choose from that point on to just be aware of it, but recognize that it's always going to be there, that we actually have choice of whether we react from it or not.
Sweet. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. Acceptance. I feel like that's something that a lot of folks tend to not do, is like have that level of acceptance for themselves and to start liking themselves and actually keeping themselves in mind in a good way, as opposed to beating themselves down and heck, even leading to that point where they don't have joy in their lives.
Yeah. And it's always interesting to me that we have created this like weird expectation of ourselves. I know for me, that was like a big aha moment in my own life, was when I would have this compassion and understanding for other people, but yet not the same compassion and understanding for myself. And it was almost like I was holding myself to greater expectations. And really, when we break that down and the fundamentals of that, we're basically saying that we're better than other people if we're not holding them to the same expectations that we hold ourselves. And that's not a fair statement to make, because nobody's better than or less than anybody else. We all just are. And in that moment of acknowledgement that we are all the same, then it gives us a greater understanding to be able to look at ourselves and say, you know what? How can I start softening a little bit within my being? And the moment that we start softening, when we drop those expectations, then all of a sudden it doesn't become work anymore. When we just give ourselves permission to be and to let go, all of a sudden our true vibrancy, our true self begins to shine through.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Get to shine through indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That light bulb gets to pop out the head for real for once. Yes.
Yeah. I know that's not just in the cartoons. That's a real experience.
Heck
Might
yeah.
not be like as like clear as a light bulb popping out of our head, but it definitely feels like that sometimes.
I could tell you visualize that.
I do. There's been so many times that I've literally had that experience and I'm like, oh yeah. And that light bulb visualization comes right into my mind.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Maybe even a shiny cowgirl hat in this case.
Well, they do say where I live, it is the cow town. So, although I will say, I actually was raised on a farm, but I don't own a cowgirl or cowboy hat.
Well, I guess people are safe from your lasso then. That's good. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, the naughtiness continues. Yep, it always
Totally. I was going to say that could go so many different ways right there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Especially north. But yes, indeed. Oh, man. But yes.
Oh.
But yeah, so in speaking of lassos in north, you have these wonderful affirmations. You had one powerful affirmation last year in 2019. Is there a particular affirmation you have for Meagan's life this year in 2020?
Yes. My affirmation this year is to simply let go. And really where I feel, especially in like the current experience that's happening right now, is we're really being shown that we don't have control over anything but ourselves. And that's 2020. I mean, this is a big year for us. This is a great opportunity for us to be able to look at, what am I holding on to that is creating resistance? What am I holding on to in terms of control? What am I holding on to in terms of expectation? And just simply let go.
And that there, my friends, is a mic drop. She let go of the mic, y'all. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yes. Yeah. You know, it's so interesting. And I love that aspect of life. And I know you can relate, Dom, just by the tell I have of your personality and how much joy you have. And it's really one of those magical experiences when you do let go, when you let go of trying to hold on to everything or trying to make things happen, all of a sudden life just starts to really happen.
Oh, yeah, that's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. It's actually really good when that happens too, and it's kind of funny how that works. It's kind of like you chase something for so long, and then out of nowhere, the chase becomes compelling, and then the moment you just slack off a bit or something, and you go chase another shiny squirrel, the thing you originally was chasing comes right back to you.
Yeah, it's so true. And, you know, it's one of those ideas of what, like, I mean, we get told all the time, well, you'll manifest what you focus on. But we forget that that's only like a small portion of what manifestation or what creation really is. That yes, we want to like have an idea, we want to have that clarity, But we have to let go, because basically, if we don't let go of the vision that we have and like the resistance that we create in achieving it, we don't really know how it can unfold and how abundant it can show up in our lives. And it's like, I swear, like God finally is like, okay, you're finally creating space for me to show you what's fully possible here, because you're not holding on to the rigidity anymore. You might be focused on something else, or you might be working to create something else, or you might have finally just fell down onto your knees and been like, you know what, I'm done. But then God's like, here you go. Here, I have space now to serve you what is truly possible.
Sweet. So what's been one of those moments in recent history that comes to mind when that happened for you?
Well, I actually even just had one very recently that I'll share. I was creating something within my business just before COVID happened, and was dead set. Things were right on par to be able to move forward and happen the way that I wanted them to happen. And I was working towards it so diligently, and I was showing up, and I was doing all the things that I had created in my mind as what needed to happen. And I wasn't getting results. And I mean, like, this is stuff that I teach, right? And I was getting a little bit frustrated. And then finally I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to walk away from this and just see what happens. And literally, no word of a lie, it was that next day, I got flooded with emails of people wanting to register for this program that I'd been trying to get people involved in, but couldn't. But the moment that I changed my direction, changed my energy towards it, it boomed.
Woo-hoo. Yes, indeed. The floodgates open. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, because we create a lot of tension when we're just focusing on creating this. And then often what happens is we get to a point when we're in that creation process where it no longer becomes fun, where it becomes more of an obligation. And we don't really notice that fine line that when we cross over it until we just get really like overwhelmed or squeezed tight. And then finally, when that squeezing happens, it's like, you know what? Nope, I'm going to step back and I'm going to do something different. Then all of a sudden we shift the vibration automatically, because we're no longer in need of something to happen. Now you're focused on something different. And then all of a sudden now you get it to happen.
Oh, yeah. That's right. It's like when you're trying to make that wine appear from the grapes, and then the grapes just crush themselves.
Yeah. Well, and realizing that all good things take a little bit of time, right? I think sometimes we get caught up in this idea of, well, if I work really hard for this much time, then it'll show up. But we forget that everything has its own rhythm, right? Like when you think about wine, it's got to sit on the shelf and age a little bit in order for it to become something delicious. And same with the things that we're looking to create in our lives, recognizing that we have to sometimes put it on the shelf for it to gain what it's meant to gain in order for us to really enjoy it.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That shelf process. Yes, indeed. Something we all got to get comfortable with, sometimes not by choice.
Oh, yes. I mean, life is always happening for us. It's not an easy thing to acknowledge. I often say life is simple, but it's not easy, because we can make life so complicated, but it is simple. But it's the process of simplicity that makes it so damn challenging sometimes. But that's okay. When we can acknowledge that it's going to be challenging, when it's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be all of these messy things, then all of a sudden it doesn't seem so bad. Again, it's that acceptance.
Heck yeah, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, acceptance. Well, since this is far from your first rodeo, is there a question you wish to be asked more often when you're doing interviews like this?
That's a good question in itself. I guess one of my favorite questions to be asked is, what can people do today to start changing or start seeing change in their lives? Because I always love to give actionable things, right? Because I mean, it's so great to have the tools and to learn and to grow. But if we're not putting them into action, if we don't have something simple and tangible that we can utilize, then we're just filling up headspace.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 And the and the space in our heads, they tend to disappear as the decades start piling on.
Oh, yes. Well, and it's, it's so interesting when we start to try and remember everything, right? And I don't know if you've experienced this, but I know I used to, when I was first at the beginning of my career, I would try to remember all of the tools and all the things, and I could never remember anything. And it wasn't until I really allowed myself to embody them and become them that it was so simple to retrieve, because it wasn't even a question. I didn't have to pull out my intellectual library anymore. I could just feel it and share it.
Like Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. There you go. Just feel it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, Marky Mark knew what he was talking about with that one.
That's right. He hit the mark. That's right. Got to feel the sensation.
Oh yeah, the good vibration.
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, all the good vibes coming from the mighty Meagan herself. So coming down to the question that every guest gets to receive, and that is, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're at 25 again, but this time in 2020, and there is no pandemic, what advice would you give to yourself?
What advice would I give to myself if I was 25? That is a great question. Right now, I would say create more stillness in my life. And, it's interesting because so many people think about stillness and that avoidance. And I remember being 25 and like stillness was like the worst thing anybody could have ever told me to do. It's one of my favorite things now to do with my life. But I've definitely learned that stillness is actually what generates momentum, that we can't move forward in any way possible that's actually meaningful, that's rich in anything that we want to create, unless we create stillness first, unless we go within.
Oh, yeah, that's right. One of my favorite Meagan lines right there. Stillness creates momentum. That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. The big mo shows up when stillness happens.
So true. Yeah, it gives us finally that opportunity to actually listen to what is important for us versus all the shoulds. And I often say, if we should this and should that, if we're not careful, one day we'll should all over ourselves. So find stillness, let go of the shoulds, and generate true momentum.
Yep, because shoulds come in multiple colors too.
That they do. That is a very true statement.
That's right, because if you should all over yourself, you look like a monster out of Scooby-Doo. That's right. And then your relatives and everybody around you be like, bro. So for those who want to unleash true joy in their lives once again, or heck, even have even exponential joy from what they already have, what's the best way for folks to reach out to the mighty Meagan?
Mm-hmm. Well, check out my website, which is meaganfettes.com, or find me on Facebook, which is under Meagan Fettes, the Joy Coach, or the Rise Entrepreneur Center. and connect. I love connecting with new people. So any questions that you have or anything that you want to share, reach out. Never feel like you don't have something great to say, because I love creating conversations, even in the most wild and interesting of ways. Just realize that could go lots of different ways too.
Oh yeah, especially with the pre-recording. Well, before I put this further into the ground, any parting words for the folks still listening?
Oh man. Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is use the tools that you already have in your life, in your being. And the first one is, of course, create stillness, because stillness does create momentum. But then also utilize your breath. This is something that very few people actually understand in the true energy and energetic process that it has. And we often like totally dismiss breathing because we're like, well, we're doing it every day. I mean, we're obviously above ground, so we're still doing it. But practice deeper breathing, because breath is our life force. And the more abundantly you bring in your life force, the more abundantly you're going to experience life. So those would be my parting words, my parting advice for those that are still listening.
Hey there, you superstar. Thanks a bunch for making it this far in the podcast. Hope you really enjoyed it. Heck, if you made it this far, that means you really enjoyed it. Be sure to shoot the guest an email or head over to the social media pages and leave them a nice response that you heard them on the Going North podcast, so that way they can continue to be inspired to do great things. And be sure to share this podcast with others that you think would enjoy it as well, because we want to inspire as many people as possible to live their dreams, embrace them, and to do something positive.